Everyone, my name is Representative Dr. Anna Viascamani. We are here under tragic circumstances. Another sloth has died. A sloth that was taken from the wild for human entertainment. A sloth that was pursued by a for-profit agenda for the so-called now bankrupt sloth world that we're standing in front of today. It's a very upsetting reality, but we're also so grateful for all the partners that have stepped up in the media and in the advocacy realm and other elected officials that are here to honor the sloths that were killed and to also seek accountability while strategizing on long-term policy change so this never happens again. Orlando is known as a top tourist destination, one that is family friendly, one that creates lifelong experiences. This is a tragedy to the brand of Orlando. It's a shame when it comes to the importance of animal welfare. And what's even more disappointing is the fact that state regulators have continued to say that nothing that happened was illegal. And that is unacceptable, which is why you've seen offices like ours, alongside Congressman Maxwell Frost, Commissioner Nicole Wilson, and others, step up to say, we don't like that answer. And we're going to pursue justice and accountability, regardless of what Florida Wildlife Commission continues to say. And that is why we requested a criminal investigation with the state attorney general. And despite the partisan differences between many of us, there seems to be an alignment that when it comes to animal welfare and when it comes to protecting our precious ecosystems in Florida and globally, that there is consensus. That this is important, that this transcends all partisanship, and I'm really grateful to see that type of alignment, especially during these political times. What makes today's gathering even more impactful is that we have very, very important visitors who have traveled from Costa Rica to join us today. This is the Sloth Institute and the Sloth Conservation Fund. These are leading expert voices on the health and well-being of sloths, leaders that have been championing conservation efforts in the native lands of our sloths, and they've come all the way from Costa Rica to join us here in Orlando to help emphasize this tragedy, to help emphasize the efforts they played in trying to prevent it from happening in the first place, and to also give the public information on ways you can get involved and what those next steps could be on the policy front. This is the first press conference of their arrival. There'll be many more conversations and meetings. They'll be meeting with the Attorney General and State Attorney's Office later, meeting with the Central Florida Zoo later. So we have a packed agenda for our visitors, but we wanted to kick it off with you today to help ensure that you can get some of your initial questions out and that we can start this very important conversation. And so with that said, I'm going to go ahead and start passing the mic. We have our two visitors from Costa Rica. We also have Commissioner Nicole Wilson, and we have a concerned citizen who's also going to share her viewpoint as well. And so, oh my gosh, and we have just been joined by Commissioner Mike Scott as well. If you'd like to say a few words, you're welcome to. Okay, so I first want to introduce Dr. Rebecca Cliffe, who is the founder and executive director of the Sloth Conservation Foundation.
Oops. Hi everyone. Apologies in advance. I've got quite a lot to say on this issue because I feel quite strongly about it. I've spent the last 17 years of my life studying and protecting sloths in the wild. And during that time, I've learned a lot about what sloths need to survive and what's required to care for them properly. Drawing on all of that experience, I can say with complete confidence that what's happened here in the building right behind us goes far beyond anything that should be considered acceptable or humane. One of the things I think it's really important to say is that we often avoid using words like scared and frightened when we talk about animals because we've got this idea, this perception that those kind of feelings are somehow uniquely human. But science has shown us again and again that that's not true. Animals, including sloths, are perfectly capable of experiencing these same feelings. They feel scared when they're violently ripped from the rainforest canopy. They feel frightened when they're put in a crate and put in the cargo hold of an aeroplane and transported across continents. And one of the most important things to know about sloths is that they don't have a strong fight or flight response. When a sloth is scared or frightened, it internalizes that stress and it will suffer in silence until it's too late. Sloths are incredibly specialized animals. They've evolved over the last 30 million years to live in warm, humid, tropical rainforests where they eat leaves and live quietly in solitude. Every part of their biology is built around that, from their inability to regulate their own body temperature to the specialized microbes that live in their stomach that help them digest the leaves that they eat. When you take a sloth out of that environment and when you replace it with things like brown rice or Pedialyte solutions, when you expose them to cold temperatures and constant human disturbance, they simply do not survive, and we know that. Anyone with even a basic understanding of sloth biology knows this because it's been well documented. We know what sloths need to stay. We know what sloths need to survive. In almost every way imaginable, those needs were not met by Sloth World. From the way these animals were violently taken from the wild, which is reflected in the physical injuries that were seen on their bodies, to the conditions they were kept in here in Florida, they were never given a chance to survive, and the result was suffering and death. And this didn't just happen once. It happened again and again, and it was allowed to happen, and that is what we're here to understand and to get to the bottom of today. In 2024, 21 sloths were brought here from Guyana, and they were placed in an unprepared warehouse in a parking lot with no electricity, no climate control, and no running water. And within a matter of days, all 21 of those sloths were dead. Another 10 sloths were then imported from Peru. All 10 of those animals died as well. None of these deaths were reported at the time because under the current system, they do not have to be. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission became aware of the 31 sloth deaths in August 2025 during an inspection, and yet they allowed Sloth World to continue importing more sloths until as recently as March this year. During that time, we now know that another 21 sloths have lost their lives, bringing the total to 55 dead sloths right now. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission has stated that they found no evidence of violations, but under Florida law, it's a criminal offense to subject animals to unnecessary suffering. Placing highly sensitive animals into a warehouse with no electricity, no heat, and no running water resulted in suffering that was predictable, visible, and entirely preventable. I struggle to understand how that does not constitute a violation.
Absolutely.
And if this does not meet the threshold for suffering under the law, then we have to act whether the threshold is set far too low and whether the laws are sufficient. At the Sloth Conservation Foundation, alongside our partners at the Sloth Institute, we feel very strongly that there needs to be accountability for what has happened here. And just as importantly, we need to make sure that this never happens again. From a scientific standpoint, we already know that there is no ethical, safe, or justifiable reason to continue taking sloths from the wild, particularly when the only beneficiaries are those profiting from their exploitation. For that reason, we are calling for a ban on the import of wild-caught sloths into the United States for commercial purposes and private ownership.
That's right.
And we'll continue to push for that change for as long as it takes. We're also calling for stronger protections more broadly, including a review of how sloths are currently classified, an end to hands-on encounter experiences, and full transparency when animals die in these facilities. Quite simply, sloths are not commodities for us to own or profit from. They're living sentient animals with highly specialized needs that have evolved to live in the rainforest. Many of the sloths that were brought here may have lived for decades, wild and free in the rainforest, only to be removed and confined to a warehouse where they've got jungle leaves painted on concrete walls. They'll never see the real rainforest again. So it leaves us with a very simple question. How is this considered acceptable under state and federal laws in the United States? And while we're here today to demand accountability and action, we're also here because there are 10 sloths who have survived this and who now depend entirely on the care they're going to receive moving forward. So on that note, I'd like to introduce Sam Trull from the Sloth Institute. She's a world expert in sloth rescue and rehabilitation, and she'll speak more about the challenges these animals now face and what it will take to support them moving forward. Thank you.
Not sure there's much more I can add to that. She was very thorough. But over the past 13 years, I have specialized in the rehabilitation and release of sloths in Costa Rica. And one of the main things I've learned is that sloths are very Goldilocks. They need everything just right to survive. They need the exact right temperature. They need the exact right humidity. They need the exact right tree species with the exact right leaf on that tree, or else they simply won't eat. I mean, just standing here and listening, do you really think that traffic is something that they need? That's not something that helps them thrive. They also need the exact right environment not to feel stressed. As Dr. Cliffe mentioned, stress is hugely important in affecting their welfare. Bringing a sloth directly from the wild and then transporting them to Orlando, Florida to live in a cold warehouse without a proper diet is simply just a recipe for disaster. After reviewing the necropsy records of 21 sloths that died at Sloth World, our veterinarian was able to determine that these sloths suffered from extreme amounts of stress, intestinal issues related to improper diet, and there was even evidence of physical trauma on their spinal cords. However, the saddest part to me was when I read what remained in their stomachs. Sloths are folivores, which means they only eat plant matter, like leaves, seeds, wild fruits. And because of their extremely slow metabolisms, they actually have the slowest metabolism outside of hibernation of any mammal. It can actually take them a month to digest a single meal. So in those necropsy records, a lot of the sloths showed signs of diarrhea, which meant that their large intestines were completely empty. But in their stomachs was still the evidence of their last remaining wild diet, the last time they would ever eat in the wild. Today we're asking for change. What happened at Sloth World is unique in the number of sloths that died, especially in such a short amount of time, but the business model is not unique. We analyzed sloth import records into the U.S. from 2011 to 2021, and we found that over 1,000 sloths were caught from the wild, brought into the United States simply for commercial purposes. This has been happening for a long time, and sloths have been dying one by one. But now, finally, people are paying attention because it was so many sloths that died at one time. So we're hoping that now that we have your attention, you'll help us make a change. Like Dr. Cliffe mentioned, we want a ban on the import of sloths into the U.S., or at least Florida, and we think we can finally maybe keep them where they belong, in the rainforest. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well done.
Commissioner Nicole.
Yeah, and please welcome Commissioner Nicole Wilson.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Representative Escamani, and our partners here advocating on behalf of these incredibly gentle creatures. The death of dozens of sloths at an unpermitted facility in Orange County is more than a tragedy. It's an indictment of our broken system. These animals are sentient, beautiful creatures living a peaceful life, and they've been treated as commodities. The warehouse where they were being held was permitted for vehicles. This complete catastrophe exposes the lethal gap in oversight where imported wildlife is exploited for entertainment and profit at the expense of their very lives. Our current safeguards have failed, and when dozens of animals can be warehoused in unsafe, unpermitted conditions, it's clear that incremental reform isn't sufficient. We have to move beyond that. Better coordination is mandatory. Clearly, I represent a local government here in Orange County. The warehouse was in Orange County. We're standing right now in the city of Orlando. We have a state representative here, and we understand that there are incredible advocates at the federal level. That coordination is going to be required. FWC in August of 2025 investigated and then failed to notify building inspectors. In August of 2025, if FWC didn't believe that wildlife was their concern in that warehouse, all they had to do was make a call to building safety, code enforcement, Commissioner Wilson's office, Commissioner Scott's office, and we would have sent our own people there. Right now, under our current permitting regulations, they were unable to gain entry, but still saw evidence that there were animals being kept in the warehouse. I'm working today, tomorrow, in coming days to make sure that we close that gap and provide them the authorization necessary in order to be able to gain entry if there's evidence of this type of animal cruelty inside. I finally want to make sure that while I'm standing here in front of our local news media and some of our nonprofit partners, to thank them to alerting the agencies that should have been the safeguard. If without our investigative journalists, without our nonprofit partners, this would have been a tragedy told completely at the end of the demise of these sloths, and maybe even more. So we really need to make sure that we're all in on this. And I'm going to finish out. We're standing here in the tourist capital of the world, by asking people who visit here, by asking people that work here in our hospitality industry, by asking our hospitality leaders to demand that we no longer make these beautiful sentient creatures or any wildlife part of our entertainment. We have incredible advancements in animatronics. Use animatronics to mimic what is happening in wildlife and leave the wildlife in the wild. They belong in the wild.
Absolutely.
The idea of honoring and visiting a sloth that has been violently torn from its home is not showing love to that creature. And many of the people that wanted to visit this attraction believe they love sloths, believe they care for wildlife. But do it the right way. Join us, advocate for making sure our wildlife stays in the wild and making sure that we close the legal gaps that allowed this tragedy to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilson. I'm going to welcome Commissioner Mike Scott, if you want to say a few quick words, and then Linda Coffin to wrap us up, and then we'll take questions.
I think what you guys are seeing here is a partnership at the local level, the state level, and the federal level. Just because there aren't other electeds and other leaders that are not represented here today does not mean that they are not representative in their voice and the advocacy for animals who can't speak for themselves. I think regardless of classification, we want folks to know that our community, the Orange County community, the Orlando community, is one that is welcoming but also compassionate, regardless of what class. I keep focusing on classification of an animal. It doesn't change the fact that, they have a habitat, that's where they belong, and us as a community are going to advocate for those who can't advocate for themselves. Whether they walk on 2 legs or 4 legs, we are working together as a partnership, and we're going to continue that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Linda Coffin, please.
Hi, thank you so much, Representative Escamani and Commissioners Moore and Scott. And really, thank you so much for these women coming all the way from Costa Rica to explain why this is such an important issue. I was so lucky this summer to be able to go to Costa Rica and see these beautiful animals in the wild. So gentle, so slow moving, so precious. And the thought that this has happened to them so that we can have some money-making business here in our city is horrendous. And we definitely need to change the laws. We definitely need to find out how this is happening, and it should never happen again. So please get your voices out there and let people know this has got to stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. And I'll just add some quick wrap-up thoughts. We open up for questions. To Commissioner Wilson's point, I heard about this story because of the Inside Climate News article. A constituent's wife texted to him and he texted to me. That's how I first became aware that this was happening. And so that's huge praise to our media partners, but also what a disgrace to government, to state regulators for not thinking that the public would be outraged, not thinking this was a problem, and for allowing this permit to be renewed after sloth deaths. It's just truly unacceptable. And if we were here outside a pet store for dogs or for cats, there would have been arrests made already. And so it's very important for us to also amplify that regardless of what kind of animal you are, that you need to be, thank you, sir, that you need to be safe when you are in the confines of Florida. And of course, echoing the point made regarding just the importation of wild animals overall. I mean, I would also argue that this business practiced fraud by talking to the public as if they were a conservation-oriented organization, making declarations of donations to organizations. And I'll add that when I first spoke to FWC, they also told me that there were 2 owners, Pete and Ben, and that Pete was the sloth expert. And he's not certified to be a sloth expert. And so running an exotic pet store does not make you an expert on animals. If anything, you're an expert on profiteering off animals, but doesn't mean you're an expert on the health and well-being of animals. And so it's very important for there to be accountability, and we're not going to stop till we get it. So with that said, we'll open up for any questions from our media partners, and if you want to direct it to a specific speaker, please do. Hannah?
Dr. Cliffe and Sam, you guys come up for I want to ask y'all first. This has been, years in the making for you guys. You heard about this because you were on the forefront of sloth conservation. You heard rumblings that there was a business opening. Now that you look behind you and see that Sloth World is no longer written up there, it's covered up, what does that mean for you?
You want me to take it? You know, it's two feelings, right? It feels like kind of like an accomplishment, right? We've stopped this from going ahead, and we're really glad that Pete and Ben are not going to profit off of the suffering that they've caused to those sloths. But it's also a lot of grief and sadness, because at the end, like at the center of all this is, we don't know exactly how many, but dozens of wild sloths that have lost their lives, and some that are still clinging on to their lives, but that's still uncertain. You know, just at the center of this is such extreme suffering, and it's just really sad that it's taken this all happening to get here. But yeah, I am extremely glad that sign is being taken down. The whole thing needs to come down.
I think also it's energized us to keep fighting, especially now seeing, I mean, all of you here, you care. Like, we've cared for so long, and it's a lot of times it's felt like we've just been talking into an echo chamber, like, oh, people think sloths are cute, but do you actually care about what happens to them? Do you actually want to see them in the wild? And now we're seeing you do. So we're just gonna fight harder and be louder until we get what we need to keep them safe.
My next question is for Representative Escamani or any of the commissioners.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
The way I see it, you know, moving forward, there's two steps here. There's the legislative angle, you know, with when it comes to policy change, and there's also the criminality version of it. We talked about, you and I, Representative Escamani, that the legislative is going to take a while. It's not even going to be until next session until this is really talked about. So talk to me about the importance of the criminality of it now and the investigation moving forward.
Yeah, great question. We need accountability, because if not, what stops someone else from doing this again, whether it's with sloths, whether it's with other exotic animals? And so we do need criminal charges. And I do think that having the Sloth Institute here is going to help, because clearly FWC did not understand the sensitivity of sloths. And it was also reported by Fox 35 that the veterinarian that was hired to watch these sloths did not have any background in exotic wildlife. And she admitted herself, I'm a cat dog vet. How is that not neglect? I mean, there's just so many examples that are very unique to this specific species that I think I'm hopeful will support a legal case of animal abuse charges. Now, I will add that I'm very optimistic for the future legislative body. I'm already engaged in conversations with Representative Lindsey Cross from St. Pete and Representative Meg Weinberger from South Florida. One Democrat, one Republican. Rep. Cross is a leader on environmental issues, Rep. Weinberger on animal welfare, and so I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to find this synergy for there to be clear policy change. But of course, we need the public to stay engaged with this story. It can't disappear. We cannot allow these sloths to die in vain. We have to make sure that they're honored through substantive policy change to protect those future critters that find themselves in harm's way. And I'll pass over to Commissioner Wilson.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's exactly right. It has to be a multi-tiered approach. And I'm saying that even sort of the reflection to if this was happening to dogs and cats, this would already be criminal. Well, that's not by accident, right? I think for many of you recall that out of my office, we actually worked on a retail pet store ban here in Orange County, because what we found out was that puppy mills all over the country were utilizing Orange County as a retail outlet. And it was part of this criminal enterprise. With the right data, with the right experts that cared about this, with organizations and good public engagement, we were able to adopt an ordinance that has been very effective in preventing that kind of import. This is different. This is a worldwide issue. So we're going to need international collaboration. We're going to need federal collaboration. But in the meantime, Orange County can look to updating ordinance that very specifically speak to the types of things that were happening at that warehouse, that may be able to authorize additional oversight. It was a use change, so that use change should have been reported no matter what. But the fact that that use change was being taken advantage of for the purpose of holding on to these creatures, these animals, these beautiful sentient souls, without any preparation, should have been from the outset a non-starter. We should have been notified. We should have been able to shut it down that day. So we just need to be able to tighten that up and give the authorities that are out there doing these inspections the ability to get inside.
This is a question for anyone.
I think Molly was next real quick, and then I'll go to Meg. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. I know you have
Yeah.
marketing as far as like
Yeah.
you want to change?
Well, I think our partners from Costa Rica highlighted that, but 2 quick points to it. One is just the importation of wild animals for commercial use. The Port of Miami is one of the worst actors on this, and so we have a great opportunity right here in Florida to slow down that importation and to ban it completely. You know, this is not an accredited facility, AZA, you're not operating with conservation in mind. I mean, there's no reason to steal an animal from the wild and bring them in, period. You know, if the animal was injured, that's different, right? But a wild animal that's happily chewing on leaves in the rainforest does not have to come to Florida. So that's key. On the criminal part, I think we have to see what happens with the Attorney General, but my first reaction is reporting of deaths, that if an animal dies under a Class 3 permit, that should be reported and made public, and a permit should not be renewed especially when that death is still being investigated. So those are 2 like very easy things that Florida can do, but ultimately my instinct based on what we've experienced so far is that we also have to tighten the animal abuse statute in general, because if FWC keeps saying that's not a case of animal abuse, then obviously that floor is way too low.
Can I say something really quickly? I also want to say that for as long as these types of sentient creatures, and this includes all wildlife, are treated like property, we're going to be confronting these issues. Right now, under common law, animals are property. And so it provides really the benefit of the doubt to whoever purchased. And so because they're seen by the law as a commodity, we're going to struggle with this. And I want to plant that seed in people's heads for understanding the importance of potentially carving out a different set of rights that are important for sentient creatures. Other countries have done this. It's not an unthinkable, it's not an untested policy approach or legal approach. So I just want to make sure people understand that under common law in the United States of America, animals are property, and that's a problem.
Yeah. And then Mike, please.
Yeah, so about this investigation, kind of 2-part question, because one, I mean, what is your understanding of the status of the investigation? Because there's been some confusion with these contradictory statements from the Attorney General and the State Attorney about jurisdiction. Second, in terms of the scope of the investigation, what exactly here do you think could constitute animal abuse or cruelty? Is it the importation? Is it the holding of the sloths in the warehouse, or is it both?
Yeah, great question. I'm just pulling up the statute real quick too, because I do want to note that the Office of Statewide Prosecution does have the power to investigate. So just to provide clarity there. So obviously state attorneys, their job is usually to prosecute. Law enforcement does the investigation, they gather the evidence, and a prosecutor takes that evidence, works in tandem with law enforcement to pursue charges, defending court, and so forth. The statement that came out of our state attorney's office, for me, spoke to the fact that there is a tandem effort. They're working with both assistant state attorneys and the Attorney General's office on an investigation. But I can also note that she's being careful to just delineate what her job is compared to others, which I think is fair. But ultimately, we know there's an investigation ongoing. I've spoken to the Attorney General's office as recently as yesterday, and the Assistant State Attorney, Charles Fink, at Circuit 9's office, has also expressed that he's working on an investigation. The challenge is we have to collect more evidence, and I'm assuming evidence is being destroyed as we speak, right? So unfortunately, good investigations do take time, but one is in motion. And to your point about charges, I mean, again, I feel like there's a clear example of willful neglect, because that's the distinction, right? Accident versus willful. How can this be an accident? Like, sloths died and you kept bringing in more sloths. So I mean, I think there's a clear dynamic here at play. I also want to see subpoenas. I want to see subpoenas of photos, of documents. If you were able to access these images of these sloths sitting in their own diarrhea in crates, I think that would speak pretty clearly that there's criminal charges at play here. So there needs to be a criminal avenue to receive those types of documents, because right now they're being shielded from the public. There's also concerns that some sloths are missing, that the math isn't mathing. So that's why you need legitimate criminal investigators involved that are going to take these charges seriously and not just move on as if wildlife isn't in your name. and so it's very important that we keep the pressure up.
Your
So the Attorney General is working with the State Attorney's Office, is my understanding, and they've assigned a animal welfare expert to be on that legal team. And then I have an email communication between Maxwell Frost's office, Congressman Frost's office, and Circuit 9. Charles Fink is one of their attorneys working on it as well. So from my perspective, many actors are involved, but I'm in constant communication with the AG's office statewide, and we'll continue to do that. And it's wonderful to find opportunities to work together. Obviously, we're not always aligned, so I appreciate the chance to work together for the sloths. And I think it just speaks to how we all care about the health and safety of animals, regardless of our party affiliation.
I just wanted to add, you asked earlier, what does this mean being covered? It is absolutely a win. Absolutely a win and a step in the right direction. This won't happen fast and it won't happen overnight, but I think with us being here, with the partners who are supportive but not present, and the fact that all of you are here, it is something that's important to us as a community. And so know that the advocacy doesn't stop just at a press conference or just at an investigation. It's what we're going to do over a series of conversations, meetings, and legislative actions at the local level, the state level, hopefully at the federal level, that provides a path where we're a welcoming community, and just that we care. And so a win for animal rights activists, a win for sloths, and I'm just happy for someone to get on a plane, fly hours here. It just speaks to the importance of this issue and the larger animal welfare issue overall. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And one more question, then you can also do one-on-ones as well. Yeah.
Can I do Dr. Cliffe and Sam again?
Yes, of course.
A lot of good things come out of Orlando. This is not one of them. Central Florida and Florida has been catapulted into a worldwide problem, the exotic animal trade. You guys mentioned your numbers show over 1,000 sloths imported into the U.S. over the last year. Have you dealt with any other country that sees higher numbers or worse?
Well, we've only analyzed the import records into the U.S., so I can't speak like scientifically on how many are being shipped other places, but they definitely are. Like anecdotally, we're seeing images of sloths, three-fingered sloths, which are even more sensitive than most of the sloths that died here, which are two-fingered, being held by people in different countries in Asia. So it's a worldwide problem, but I think that's also gives Orlando the opportunity to set a precedent and show the rest of the world how sloths and other animals should really be treated.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, we get reports all the time from people, a lot of concerned airport workers actually in Europe who are seeing sloths coming through the airports and they're like, what's going on? Why are sloths arriving here? And the truth is, a lot of people don't realize this, but a lot of the roadside zoos and, you know, some accredited zoos still do source animals like sloths from the wild. And it's often done under a guise of conservation, but for a lot of species like sloths, captive breeding isn't a conservation strategy. They're not being bred in captivity for any conservation purpose. Right. They're not being reintroduced to the wild. Like any sort of captive breeding happening of sloths outside of their range countries is solely for commercial purposes and for the benefit of the people owning them. And so it's something that we're going to continue fighting against. We're also working with authorities in range countries, so in Guyana, to really start understanding what is going on there. Why is this being allowed from their side as well?
So it's twofold, the import and the export.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's a really great point to close on, right, is the demand.
Yeah.
Like, this wouldn't happen if there wasn't demand. And myself and others, we've received emails from folks that bought tickets to see Sloth World, bought VIP tickets. They want their money back. And obviously, we want to make sure everyone's made whole as much as possible. I would say in the face of a bankruptcy, getting your money back is unlikely. But I want to encourage those everyday Floridians, everyday consumers to spend your money wisely, to research before you spend, and to not give into the for-profit entertainment business that feeds into the importation of wild animals. That money will be much better spent with the Sloth Institute, the Sloth Conservation Fund, with the Central Florida Zoo that's now trying to save these sloths, an accredited facility, or spend it at one of our theme parks where animals are not being hurt. I mean, there's just so many other ways to spend your money, but it's going to make our job harder to prohibit this in the future if folks keep demanding it. And so it's important to operate responsibly as a consumer as well. And so with that said, we're going to close this press conference.